Hey there, friends and enemies, Jopa here again, and today I want to talk about the best stratagems to use in Helldivers 2 because I've seen a ton of videos on this subject, and there's more nuance than I think people are giving it credit for. You can use different stratagems depending on what difficulty level you're running, which enemy types you're facing, what mission type you are on, and also if you are playing solo, if you're playing in a 4-man squad, and if you're playing with randoms versus if you're playing with a set squad. Because if you have a pre-made team of 4 players, you can make up for each other's weaknesses. You know whether you're going to stick together, spread apart. You know how much friendly fire is going to impact a team. Whereas when you're playing with randoms, you have to adjust your playstyle just a little bit to ensure that you guys aren't running over each other's toes, running the exact same loadouts, and essentially killing each other all the time. So I think all of that is important to remember when you are jumping into Helldivers 2, what type of gameplay you are taking on. Now, there are some stratagems that I think are universally great. First off, you have something like the Shield Generator Pack, which unfortunately is locked behind level 20, but once you have it, it is phenomenal, and you'll pretty much rock it all the time, no matter what type of mission you're running. And you're gonna want to make sure you call in a second and third one eventually, depending on how long the mission is, for your lower level teammates, because it will save them time and again. This will create essentially a little personal bubble that you can run around with and tank just a ton of extra damage. It is insanely useful, and I think everybody should be rocking it, whether you're fighting bugs or robots especially. This one will be absolutely vital. Then you have the railgun. You gotta be careful with this one because you're going to be firing it in unsafe mode to take down larger enemies as often as possible. You can essentially take down a charger in a couple shots. You can take down some of the big robots as well in a couple shots, maybe even one shot in unsafe mode. But you got to be careful. Not everyone, I think, is going to like the way this thing fires, especially if you don't realize to put it in the first-person mode all the time. And then 2, when you're firing in unsafe mode, you got to be really careful not to kill yourself because it can backfire on you. But I think that's one of the most powerful weapons in the game. However, if you are in a mission where you're not really facing many of the bigger enemies, it's not going to really come in handy, and you may be frustrated. Or if you are doing a mission where you have to destroy a bunch of bugs nests, you want to make sure at least one player has something like a grenade launcher or auto cannon that you can run around with in order to destroy those nests very, very easily. So just keep that in mind. And this is why I think there's a lot more than just straight up, is this stratagem better than the other? Because outside of, again, the Shield Generator Pack, most of them are going to have trade-off. Just like the Eagle Airstrike is very, very good, but I've seen so many randoms kill teammates with that thing and just absolutely waste revives that it's unbelievable. So I think that's one that you really have to be careful. And I prefer actually the Eagle 500 kg bomb. That's my favorite, not only because of how good it is, but also because of the just awesome display that you get when you call it down. So that's a personal favorite of mine. Not everyone's going to love it. I also like running the Orbital laser for that same reason, especially when you're facing massive enemies. If you're facing a Bile Titan or something of that nature, I think the Orbital laser is great. But a lot of these Orbitals or Eagle stratagems are personal preference, depending on what you like to use, how often you like to call them in. Now, if you're playing in a pre-made group, you're also probably going to want to rock the EMS Mortar Sentry because you can stun enemies all the time. However, if you're in a random group and you are having players run from one place to the next and not really stay in a location to fight enemies, you're going to have a bit of an issue with the EMS Mortar Sentry because it can stop enemies, but then they're going to turn around and chase your allies and not stay stunned for that long, and so that's a bit of an issue with that one. Now, jumping back into the grenade launcher and autocannon, those are my favorites. I pretty much call in one. If I'm not running the rail cannon, the railgun, I pretty much always call in a grenade launcher or an autocannon. I prefer the grenade launcher, but I can definitely make a case for the autocannon, especially if you have a teammate who is running the backpack, so they can load the autocannon for you. However, that does get rid of your Shield Generator Pack, so I don't really recommend that as much. Moving on down, there's some other good ones like the mortar turret. Again, you got to be really careful of friendly fire, but if you're in a defense mission, especially if you're in a mission where you're not really moving a whole lot, it's phenomenal, and I really, really like it. The expendable anti-tank is also very good, but with the 2 shots, it is called in really quickly. I just feel like there's other better options, like the railgun that you can have, and you can get more ammo for that as well. So that's why I think the expendable anti-tank is solid and is definitely good to get early on, but I probably won't use it at the stage of the game that I'm at personally. You have other solid picks like the Orbital Precision Strike, the Eagle Cluster Bomb, the Autocannon Sentry. I actually like the Autocannon Sentry more than most, especially if you were fighting something like a Bile Titan, because you can pop it down. You just have to really learn to put it on a higher ground. So as it's rotating, it doesn't rotate very fast. But if you're facing slower moving enemies that are heavier, you can have it just absolutely lay into them. And so a Charger, it's not very good against, but a Bile Titan, it is very good against. And even against some of the robots, if you can have it placed down and then have the enemies chase you into its line of fire, as long as they don't get too close, you can absolutely destroy a ton of them. So I like the Autocannon Sentry more than most, whereas other people might pick something else like the mortar. So then you've got others like the recoilless rifle, the orbital rail cannon strike. I don't really care for those as much. I probably wouldn't rock them even if it's a mission that would benefit them. But then you got the machine gun, which I think is funny when you were rocking it in a full 4 squad, but otherwise there's just better options like the grenade launcher or the autocannon. Eagle Napalm Airstrike was nice very early on when you could use it to hold areas, but unfortunately it doesn't do enough damage, so even when the enemies get burned, a lot of the bigger ones can just run right through the flames and it doesn't really affect them at all. The jump pack is fun if you want to play as something like a Mandalorian cosplay, but it's just not as good as a lot of the other options, although it is pretty hilarious. It's just once you get to the shield generator, once you have other options, backpacks, it's not really as necessary. God Dog Rover is one of my favorite early game options, but again, same thing with the regular Guard Dog. I think neither one of those are powerful enough when you get to endgame, although they can be useful when you are fighting enemies to alert you when enemies are nearby and they're charging you and you might not see them. Gatling Sentry is fine early on, but doesn't hold up late. Same thing with the supply pack. It's not really necessary once you understand where you can find ammo, how quickly you can haul down your supplies, and all that kind of good stuff. Mines are hilarious, and I think they're fun, but again, they're not the best. The HMG replacement, some people love, some people hate. I don't like the fact that you have to be in it to use it. I think there's other better options. Anti-material rifle, I think, is not good and one of my least favorite of the stratagems in the game personally. Then we got the Stalwart, which also is not very good. The Flamethrower, which I wish was better. Orbital Gatling Barrage, Spear, Tesla Tower, Rocket Sentry, Machine Gun Sentry, Guard Dog, which I mentioned, the Arc Thrower. That's one of my biggest disappointment. That and the Tesla Tower, I feel like they are not nearly as good as I'd hoped they would be, which is very, very unfortunate. The Rocket Pods, the EMS Strike, the Orbital Gas Strike, Smoke Strikes, Airburst Strike, Walking Barrage, and the HE Barrage. A lot of these I've used to test out and do different missions, but they just feel underwhelming, which is a very much a bummer for me. But the worst ones, in my opinion, the absolute lowest stratagems that I'll probably never use are the Laser Cannon, the Ballistic Shield, and the 100mm HE Orbital Barrage. All of those are just the biggest waste of time, and you definitely don't want to run them. However, if you have others that you really enjoy and fit your playstyle, definitely use those, have fun with them. I highly recommend trying everything out and seeing what works for you. You might be playing at a difficulty that some of the lower ranked ones are going to perform better for you, but overall there are a lot of options at the top that you can mix and match, especially if you're running with a group who can complement each other as much as possible. I think that's something to definitely keep in mind as you play the game. And overall, have fun, play however you want, as long as you aren't holding up the rest of the team. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Helldivers 2 content from me going forward. I'll definitely be posting a ton. My name is JoPa, have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.